Good afternoon and welcome to the Weekly Livestock Market Update. I'm Tom Stever, Brownfield anchor reporter, coming to you this week from the National Cattle Industry Convention in Phoenix. We've been here most of the week covering this. It's kind of winding down right now, but we're still setting policy and paying attention to what the National Cattlemen's Beef Association is up to and their affiliate organizations as well. Joining us from the University of Missouri is livestock economist Scott Brown. Welcome, Scott.
Good afternoon, Tom.
Yeah. Well, how's it going back there?
I was going to say, I think we're jealous because you have much warmer weather than we have here in central Missouri. So welcome back to mid-Missouri here before long and some cold weather.
Well, I understand it's going to be up to 50 degrees over the weekend, and so we'll look forward to that. But for now, we are enjoying the shirt sleeve weather out there. It's been in the 80s most of this week, and I understand a little bit unusually warm, even for the Valley of the Sun at this time of the year. But nonetheless, it has been a nice week and a nice break from the cold weather up there. And what is this weather really doing to the livestock market picture?
Yeah, so Tom, last week we talked a little bit about dry weather, and I think I continue to want to get it in the watch box for everyone. And for maybe us in mid-America, we're not quite so concerned about trying to grow grass when we have temperatures that are very low. But when you start looking in places like Texas and Oklahoma, the dry weather, I think, is starting to become more of a factor in terms of cow herds and where many of those operators may move as we go ahead. I do think we've continued to see a lot of move of calves off of wheat pasture just because wheat pasture has been so poor in places like Texas and Oklahoma. I want us to pay attention, as we get big cattle inventory reports to talk about today. Weather could certainly kind of wreak havoc with where we go with that report if we continue to stay as dry as we've kind of started 2018.
Yeah, it reminds me of maybe 5 years ago when that bloom of drought started down deep in Texas and really spread over the Midwest and really played havoc with the cattle herd at that time.
Yep,
hate
absolutely.
For that to happen again.
Yeah, let's hope that isn't the repeat of 2012 as we kind of sit here early in 2018, but it is one we want to be paying attention to for sure.
Let's talk about cash markets a little bit. Hogs were a little softer this week.
Yeah, so we saw cash hog markets basically flat for the week this week. If we looked at the current lean hog futures contract, they were down about $1 this week as well. Pork cutout value relatively flat. We had some weakness in products like hams that offset some growth in pork bellies that we saw this week. If we kind of look at what's happening on that pork side, I just remind us the pork cutout value now rests about 1% below where it did a year ago. For a long time, we've been talking about some strength there relative to a year ago, and that's been slowly ebbing away from us, but nothing to get too concerned about, I guess, at this point. If we switch gears and look at cattle, a much better week in terms of the positive news on the cattle side. I'd say fed cattle prices $3 higher this week, while feeder cattle markets, we kind of were uneven, I guess. Early sales this week were steady to 3 lower. As we got later in the week, we saw some strength steady to 3 higher in some of those sales. On the future side, we really have seen some strength the last couple of days in both feeder cattle and live cattle futures. I'd say live cattle futures for the current contract month up $2, while current month feeder cattle futures closed $4 higher. So some nice strength on that side of the picture. Perhaps part of that is due to what we saw in the choice beef cutout value this week, up nearly $3. We had strength across the board in all those components in the beef cutout value. And when you look at the choice beef cutout value, it's still sitting there 8.5% above year-ago levels. So a little different story in terms of that choice beef cutout value relative to what we see on the pork side. And just a good week all in all for cattle markets.
Very good. Well, another part of the convention here that's been very interesting is that CattleFax has been commenting on the cattle inventory report that came out fairly close to what analysts were expecting.
Yeah, so many of us, I think, guessed pretty close to where we thought this cattle report would end up. I look at a couple of things here that I think are important. Number one, when you look at beef cow inventory up 1.6%, that comes very close in line with the average trade guess of 1.8. 31.7 million head of beef cows. So another year of expansion in terms of beef cow inventory. However, when you look at those beef replacement heifers, actually down 3.7%. So talking about keeping fewer heifers back, to me, that's starting to suggest we're slowing that growth in beef cow inventory and probably set ourselves up by the time we get to January 1 of 2019 of being reasonably flat in terms of overall beef cow inventory. So I think, again, very much where we had anticipated all along. I do look at cattle on feed. So this is the one time a year we get U.S. cattle on feed. If you look at the report, it said we were up 7.2% January 1 across the U.S. You kind of look at that data relative to the 1,000 head report we got last week, it would suggest cattle on feed outside of those 1,000 plus feed yards up 2.2. Again, I think that doesn't surprise us, just given how cheap corn is, and a lot of folks might be feeding some cattle that haven't done it for a while.
So this growth, no growth, or expansion, no expansion scenario, what does that mean to you, Scott?
Well, so again, I think we're going to have plenty of cattle to deal with here in the next couple of years, but maybe now we're beginning to see the signs that we get a year and a half, 2 years down the road. We really slow the growth of cattle inventory, and maybe that helps us on the price side as well. So maybe we can keep prices a little higher than otherwise would be the case. I think, again, it just kind of reminds us that, 2018, we're going to grow again, but maybe that's the last year of big substantial growth.
Also this past week, restaurant performance. How did that do?
Yeah, so Tom, I'll say I get a little bullish when I see the December 17 Restaurant Performance Index this week. That overall index setting at 102.9, strongest index we've seen now for several months. But when you start to look at the components, and we talk about this a lot, there's a current situation index as well as an expectations index. For much of 2017, that expectations index kept carrying us. But when you look at the data we got here for December of 17, same store sales at 105.4 is really strong in my book. I don't think we've seen that strength for quite a while. Customer traffic setting at 102.6. All in all, we're up in every single subcategory of that current situation index and expectations index. So across the board, some really good news there. And I think maybe, one might argue when you see higher choice beef prices this week that it's mimicking what's been, again, stronger demand that we kind of see out of that restaurant performance index.
Just what I've seen this week in Phoenix, I know that could have moved the index just a little bit on its own. There are a lot of people going to a lot of restaurants down here, and I know a lot of people enjoy that as well. So if the restaurant index is encouraging, in your view, bottom line, is that just going to be good for livestock producers?
Yeah, so in many ways, I remind folks all the time, I always worry about the increase in supplies that we have coming here in 2018. But if we keep demand as strong as we've been seeing here out of the gate, maybe we moderate a lot of the growth in supplies and end up with a 2018 cattle price outlook that looks very similar to where we were in 2017. So all in all, this demand side still is giving us some good news, I think, as we, get here in early February.
Another measurement of the economy overall is, of course, the jobs report. We're getting a few more jobs, a couple of 100,000 more this past week.
Yeah, that's right. So jobs report out this morning, up 200,000, a little above expectations, but kind of right in line with where folks thought expectations would be. We do see wage rates that are now 0.3% higher last month, helping put more money in consumers' pockets. The unemployment rate, staying there at 4.1%. So just like from the Restaurant Performance Index, we're seeing the signs of growth in the economy. And many times I'll say I think that helps the lower income segments of consumers in this country with more money in their pockets that likely consume maybe both more meat in their diet as well as a buy up in that meat. So I think all in all, some good news still coming out of the jobs report as well.
What do we look for the coming week for reports?
Yeah, so next week, Tom, we're going to see USDA release their monthly WASDE report on Thursday. Be interesting to see what kind of moves they make in cattle, for example, as a result of this annual cattle report that we got out. We'll also get a look at monthly trade data on Wednesday of next week. I know we've seen some really strong weekly export numbers, so I'm looking forward to seeing what we get out of that monthly report on the trade side next week.
Very good. Very good. And with that, I have to put my shades on again and go out and sit in the sun a little bit.
Enjoy the rest of that warm weather, Tom.
Yeah, not really. Not really. I'm kidding. I kid. Scott, we'll talk to you next Friday. You can get our weekly livestock market update every Saturday morning. You can go to our website, brownfieldagnews.com. You can click on the subscribe link to get that. And of course, it's free. You can also submit questions there at that link as well. Also, check out John Perkins' twice daily market update, and that's you can find that on YouTube, and go to Brownfield Ag News and click on that report as well. With the weekly livestock market update, I'm Tom Stever on Brownfield.